Welcome back to Talladega. 40 laps complete in this, the 11th Busch Series race. 9 different winners. Here, Joe Nemechek, the only driver to visit victory lane twice, is already out of the race. This track, the longest on the circuit. And Buddy Baker, the first driver to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier here, happened in 1970. Buddy is here today as a spotter, or tomorrow as a spotter for Ryan Newman. There's fast food, and then there's KFC.
Hey, and there's a lead change.
Stacey Compton in that 59. These guys kind of keep swapping the lead back and forth. You know, we look at Kenny Wallace in the 48 car, and that's a Pontiac. And he normally runs a Chevrolet. A lot of teams for Daytona and Talladega that run Chevrolets, they go to the Pontiac because they've determined the center of the rear spoiler is down further on a Pontiac. But what NASCAR has done to try to even it up, they have put about a half-inch. Stacey Compton in a Chevrolet, they have added a half-inch to the height of the Pontiac rear spoiler, along with 2 inches wider. The Pontiac rear spoiler is 7 by 59 inches wide. The Chevrolet and the Dodge is 6.5 by 57. Just trying to even these cars up.
Excuse me. The thing that I was thinking about is looking at that Buddy Baker graphic. He was the first one to go over 200 mile an hour here. When Mr. France built this racetrack, his vision was to build a racetrack that cars would run over 200 miles an hour. That's why they built this place. And today, the vision is to keep them under 200 miles an hour.
Right. I say Buddy's here this weekend spotting for Ryan Newman. He lost his dad, Hall of Famer Buck Baker, last Sunday. And our condolences to Buck's wife, Susan, and to Buck's children, Buddy, Susie, and Randy, and the whole family. We've lost a Hall of Famer and a great driver.
But, you know, it's still interesting. I mean, I think it's kind of neat how so many of the pioneers of our sport are still alive today. And guys that made this sport, started this sport, were the first guys ever drove these cars on some of these big racetracks, are still around.
Saw Rex White in the garage area, the 1960 Grand National champion. He was telling us how he invented the jacking bolt for these Winston Cup type cars, and the seat side bolster in 1957 built him into all the Chevrolet factory cars back then. A lot of great stories. Matt?
Something's wrong with 59.
We're looking at Stacey Compton, the 59 car. It looks like he's picked up some trash, a trash bag or something, and it's right at the base of the windshield, and that's the cowl opening. Right here in front of the cowl opening. Yeah. And that's where air goes into the carburetor area, and that could definitely hurt the performance.
You know what? I think the decals are blown out. The decals are blown off the hood and come back on there.
I think you're right.
And that's not a good place because, folks, right in there, that little opening is where they get the air for the engine.
Steve, if that happens to close off that, it'll just be like Mark throttling it. Forward. Let's watch it, Stacey.
If that closes off that air intake, it'll cause that engine to detonate. She might blow up on him.
Car was so fast, blew the sponsor right off the hood.
Blew it right off the hood. A lot of heat on that hood.
I've heard of a lot of things happening to race cars because of preparation one way or another, but I've never seen this.
I always wanted a car fast enough to blow them off, but I never did have one.
There you can see the slot is still mostly open where that engine gets its air to the carburetor. Dick Berger.
48 car. Kenny Wallace has just radioed in. At first he thought he had an ignition problem. He switched to the backup ignition system. That didn't do it. The fuel pressure is bouncing around back and forth. He's calling back and forth to his crew chief trying to get it squared away. Wallace had been running in third, and just moments ago he said he had the stuff to win this race. Now engine trouble. To Matt.
Dick, I'm here in the 59 pit, and Steve Plattenberger's the crew chief. Steve, we could see the decal bouncing around the cowl area. Are you going to have to pit him early?
We're going to wait and see if the motor starts slowing down, and if it does, we'll stop for gas and pull it off. You know, it looks funny. Let's lead like this right here. We had a real good car, got to the front, and we'll just play it by ear and see if it comes off or not.
They did a deal with the 57 car to let him lead a lap to get those 5 bonus points, and that's what they did, and that's why the 57 did lead a lap, and then when the 57 led the lap, they got the 59 back by. He needs the fresh air to keep that engine cool.
Yeah, and so far, I mean, it's not hurting anything. It's on a little bit of a corner of the air box there. You watch it, watch the decal right here. It just starts coming up. See the front edge of it right there, kind of raising up. Got too much heat in that grill.
And that hole at the base of the windshield, it's about 2.5 inches by 20, and it's a direct cold air box to the top of the carburetor that gets air to the carburetor.
We've seen things today we've never seen. 27 cars pile up on the backstretch. The decal peels off the leader's car and almost clogs up the engine. Jeff Hammond, have you seen a day like this ever?
Guys, we're talking about that cowl opening right here. As Larry said, this is the area right here below the base of the windshield that feeds the air cleaner in here. What has happened is, like we talked about, the decal is peeled up. It actually kind of flipped over and is blocking this. And when it does that, we'll raise the hood right now. I'll show you. Here's your air cleaner. When that right there becomes blocked off, there's no air because it's a solid piece all the way around. It's the only way to get air to the carburetor. So when that air opening is blocked, the fuel flow gets, and the mixture down inside the carburetor, as Darrell said earlier, you don't get enough gas and air mixture together, you have detonation. And when that happens, usually you burn an engine up, and it doesn't take very long for that to happen. That's the reason why they're watching it so close. Right, Darrell?
Yeah, I think that he's going to be okay, though. There's enough of that opening there. But what happens is, as it gets back closer to the windshield, that's a low pressure area right in front of the windshield right there, and that's why it won't peel on off.
All right, let's get an update on Kenny Wallace, Dick.
He's okay, Mike. The problem indeed was the ignition box. He switched to the backup ignition box. He saw the fuel pressure gauge bouncing around. He thought perhaps he had a fuel problem, but then he kept watching the gauge and it kept bouncing around. So he's decided, well, he didn't watch the gauge earlier in the race. He watches it now, and that gauge seems to simply bounce around. So he's okay. To Jeff Hammond.
Kenny Wallace is talking about his ignition box is going bad. You look right here inside our cutaway car. This is where our ignition boxes are located, right on the floor of the race car. And a lot of times, because of the heat through the floorboard, and we've talked about it all weekend long, it gets about 140 degrees there, sometimes hotter than that on the floorboard. It can actually make a ignition box break down and make it fail. And when that happens, we have a backup. We have an A and a B in this car. We can switch over, and sometimes that'll pick it up and make it run better.
You know, something that Kenny Wallace is talking about, he noticed his fuel pressure. Maybe he's been doing that all along. Normally, a driver doesn't have time to look at his gauges. But today, there's only 3 cars up there. He's not racing with anybody. He's probably looking for something to kind of occupy his time as he rides along.
And these things will normally run about 6 to 7 pounds of fuel pressure.
2 cars have returned to the race from that crash, Scott Wimmer and Ron Hornaday. That puts 17 cars on the racetrack. Stacy Compton remains our leader after 49 laps.